No, you. If you want to talk about crimes, then talk about the crime. If you want to just talk about bad actions, then just talk about bad actions. Stop trying to steal all the normative weight from other areas of things just because you want to be cool and bad or whatever. Like, don't do that. If you want to talk about crimes, then talk about the crime. If you want to say, oh, you did a bad, disgusting, gross thing, then say you did a bad, disgusting, gross thing. Off. That's such a loser mind mentality. Stop.
Generally, the person's actions have to be outrageous to meet this threshold, but grabbing and forcibly kissing a stranger sure seems to be outrageous.
Is outrageous a legal term here? I don't know if I like that.
Internet chatter about the TwitchCon situation is out of control. Last week, a thirsty fanboy rushed the stage at TwitchCon in San Diego and attempted to hug and kiss the popular streamer and queen of the weeaboos, Emiru. First off, gross. She's not your waifu. Second, see that guy? That's Emiru's personal bodyguard. Twitch's security team is nowhere to be seen. Her assailant was simply escorted out of the convention hall, and according to Emiru, Twitch did nothing further until her manager raised hell. Now, just in case you're not familiar with the fandom behind female streamers like Emiru and the intensity of the parasocial relationship, think of it like a modern Beatlemania. But with dudes in their 30s, it can get intensely scary. So predictably, the internet blew up with the overconfident legal hot takes regarding the civil and criminal liabilities from this breach of security.
Twitch is officially finished. At their convention, they essentially served up their top streamer the way Predator.
There's a lot I want to talk about here after seeing what happened at TwitchCon last night, which is textbook assault.
One of the most popular streamers, Emiru, was sexually assaulted.
Most of these takes are flat out wrong, or at least woefully incomplete. So who's really on the hook here for this awful situation, and what charges could they face? Well, my job as a lawyer, but more specifically as a prosecutor, is to follow the facts to the most reasonable conclusion.
The only legal assessment I heard, it was the guy saying Twitch is finished, the first one. Unless he's also talking about, like, it's not, the guy didn't technically do sexual assault. I don't know if he did sexual assault. It probably didn't qualify for that.
So today, I'm going to break down what we know about the TwitchCon situation, explain how a prosecutor or a plaintiff's attorney would approach bringing the liable parties to justice in this case, and who should be the most concerned about lawyering up. So everybody just calm down, and let's sort out the TwitchCon drama before it gets any uglier.
Today, I'm finally going to be opening up about the psychological and domestic abuse, stalking and harassment, sexual assault, and threats of blackmail that Ms. Kip has done towards me, and some of these issues which are still ongoing.
After the streamer
Damn, why are we talking about Jesus?
Shen Indigents released the video of the assault on Twitter, it amassed millions of views. It prompted TwitchCon to put out a statement.
Assault is different from battery. Please know the difference. Not necessarily. It really depends. Every state has like different definitions for fucking assault and battery, and there's overlap in just different states. Yeah, it really just depends on the local statutes.
Claiming that they had immediately blocked this individual from returning to the TwitchCon premises, and they are banned indefinitely from Twitch, and that the safety and security of all those attending TwitchCon is our highest priority. But Emiru wasn't buying it and posted a scathing response on Twitter. According to her statement, a similar incident occurred the previous year. A stalker was harassing her, compelling her bodyguard to grab his arm and forcefully bring him to law enforcement. Twitch's response to the incident was to ban her go-to bodyguard.
There was a stalker, and he held him by the arm until police got there, and because of that, he was indefinitely banned from TwitchCon.
She goes on.
Don't ever make me side with Twitch. What did I say before about this? I understand probably why Twitch didn't allow this. If you're not employed by Twitch directly, you probably wouldn't want to keep a guy like this around because of the liability, right? Because you can't have people assaulting people, even if they say that they're private security. Like they would have to be like employed or hired by Twitch in some official capacity to do stuff like this. That'd be my guess for this. Like I understand why they would do that, but I mean, like ideally, Twitch, one, they wouldn't permaban him. You'd have a conversation or something, and then two, you would have your own adequate security, so stuff like this doesn't need to happen, right?
Place a lot of blame on Twitch for failing to protect her, especially because there were several TwitchCon security guards nearby who did nothing to help her when the incident occurred. These are facts that do not seem to reflect an organization that truly places safety and security as its highest priority. Further, according to Emiru and the video evidence, the man was just allowed to walk away.
The behavior displayed by the individual involved in the incident yesterday involving a high-profile streamer was completely unacceptable and deeply unsettling. In line with existing TwitchCon security protocols, law enforcement and security were on site. That's a lie. That's literally a lie.
She said she only heard about him being detained hours later, and that TwitchCon only apprehended him because her manager pushed for it.
They're trying to find the guy. They haven't found him. I'm like, what?
She claims to have learned that Twitch was only going to give the attacker a 30-day ban from using the site, that is, until her manager objected to the anemic punishment. And then a few days later, Emiru issued another statement telling her viewers that she talked to the police and they were working on a warrant, but were being stymied by Twitch's failure to cooperate with them.
When I got a phone call from the San Diego police, and they were talking to me, and they basically said, hey, we can't really do anything right now because they apparently know the name of the guy, but they're not giving it to us until a warrant goes through.
Now we'll talk about Twitch and the liability that they may face in a moment, but plenty of other influential streamers echoed Emiru's alarm bells against TwitchCon's lax security, including the VTuber Iron Mouse.
How many times does bad have to happen in order for people to start taking it seriously and start waking the fuck up and start protecting people and start offering better security for people? What if that was your sister? What if that was somebody from your family? Imagine the person you care about the most going through that.
If you don't know why it matters that Iron Mouse is calling TwitchCon unsafe for creators, then good for you. You know the touch of grass. But for the rest of you men of culture, you know that VTubers and three-dimensional streamers alike have a reasonable expectation that Twitch will protect their identity and ensure a reasonable level of safety from all the degenerates in chat. These are the most critical factors for them to do their jobs as entertainers. So Twitch is not off the hook here. But the extent of their liability depends a lot on what a thorough fact-finding investigation discovers about the TwitchCon situation and what crimes or civil torts Emiru's assailant actually committed, which are not as straightforward as the internet would have you believe. Okay, let's watch the clip again, paying special attention to what the guy does and when. Emiru alleges that in this moment, Thirsty McThirstface here tries to kiss her. The internet was quick to proclaim this as sexual assault, and this is totally understandable. If a random guy charges forward, grabs you, and tries to forcibly kiss you, that really seems like sexual assault, and in some ways it is. The problem, though, is that California's statute on sexual assault is pretty specific. California uses the common law term battery to refer to an assault that results in some form of touching. So California's sexual assault criminal statute is actually titled sexual battery. California Penal Code section 243.4 subsection E1 states the following.
Okay.
Any person who touches an intimate part of another person, if the touching is against the will of the person touched and is for the specific purpose of sexual arousal, sexual gratification, or sexual abuse, is guilty of misdemeanor sexual battery, punishable by a fine not exceeding $2,000 or by imprisonment in a county jail not exceeding 6 months or by that fine and imprisonment. Now, 6 months in jail or a $2,000 fine seems pretty insufficient for sexual battery, but that's not the only problem here. Under California law, the attacker has to touch an intimate part of the person, and the law defines intimate part very narrowly as the sexual organ, anus, groin, or buttocks of any person, and the breast of a female. In her statement after the fact, Emiru said,
and then he grabs my face, and he leans in, and lips puckered, tries to kiss me, and I start screaming.
From the angle of the video, it's hard to tell where the attacker's hands were, but since Emiru didn't mention that he touched her anywhere but her face, we're gonna assume that that's the only place he touched her. So he grabbed her face and tried to kiss her. Does that qualify as sexual battery? Well, under California law, an attempted forcible kiss wouldn't qualify as sexual battery because the attacker has to touch an intimate part of another person. In fact, even if the attacker had managed to kiss her, it may not qualify as sexual battery because lips and faces aren't included as intimate parts of the body under section 243.4. His actions were offensive, threatening, and unacceptable, but because of the technicalities of California's law, he likely won't be liable for sexual battery or attempted sexual battery.
Why is he quoting California law? Because that's where it happened in TwitchCon, right?
It's important to note that sexual assault laws are really jurisdictionally specific. Soccer or football fans may recall that a few years ago, the head of Spain's National Soccer Federation.
Is that not insane? What do you mean? I don't know. Why would it? I don't know. Is every single thing sexual? It's the way the statute's written.
Forcibly kissed a member of the women's soccer team after their World Cup victory.
Rubiales kissing Hermoso on the lips, a kiss she said that was not welcome. The Federation chief brushing off initial questioning about the advance.
He was later convicted of sexual assault by Spain's High Court. So if TwitchCon had been held in a different state or country, Emiru's attacker potentially could be charged with sexual assault or an attempt to do the same. But this happened in California, and that's that. For what it's worth, prosecutors probably wouldn't have a hard time convincing a jury his actions were principally motivated for the purposes of sexual arousal. Sure, he could always argue that he was just so enamored with Emiru's wholesomeness that his cringy kiss attempt was nothing more than G-rated affection, a type of I did it for the mouet offense. But come on, that doesn't pass the smell test. Again, if you don't know what that word means, good for you. But what about non-sexual assault and battery? Well, our favorite floor man and de facto Jesus of the internet had this to say.
There's a lot I want to talk about here after seeing what happened at TwitchCon last night with Emiru being assaulted by a rogue lunatic fan who just walked completely unimpeded past the line at her meet and greet and unconsensually hugged her and looked like tried to kiss her, which is textbook assault.
So is this textbook assault? Is this battery? Again, under common law, assault is generally the attempt to touch someone, and battery is the actual touch. California Penal Code Section 240 defines assault as an unlawful attempt coupled with a present ability to commit a violent injury on the person of another. There was clearly an attempt to kiss her, and obviously the attacker had the ability to follow through with that. He was only stopped belatedly.
It depends on the state, but generally you can technically assault somebody without touching them. It's not always the case, but usually battery and assault, the difference is if you actually make physical contact or actually hurt somebody or cause an injury. But an assault can be like if you walk up to somebody with like a bat and you're like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, and you're like get in their face, but you don't actually like touch them or hit them. You can still be charged with assault depending on the place. Sometimes they combine it, sometimes it's different. Sometimes they don't have a battery charge.
The present ability to commit a violent injury on the person of another. There was clearly an attempt to kiss her, and obviously the attacker had the ability to follow through with that.
I get this point, but it feels like a bit actually. No, fuck you. If you want to talk about crimes, then talk about the crime. If you want to just talk about bad actions, then just talk about bad actions. Stop trying to steal all the normative weight from other areas of things just because you want to be cool and bad or whatever. Like, don't do that. If you want to talk about crimes, then talk about the crime. If you want to say, oh, you did a bad, disgusting, gross thing, then say you did a bad, disgusting, gross thing. Fuck off. It's such a loser mind mentality. Stop.
He was only stopped belatedly by Emiru's security guard. But does a forcible kiss qualify as a violent injury? As it turns out, California courts have a long history of agreeing that a forcible kiss does qualify as a violent injury under California's assault law. In a 1907 California Supreme Court case called People v. Bradbury, the court quoted a criminal justice manual that stated, the kind of physical force is immaterial. It may consist in the taking of indecent liberties with a woman or laying hold of her and kissing her against her will. Since then, many California courts have affirmed this. A California appeals court found that violent injury doesn't just include bodily harm. It includes any wrongful act committed by means of physical force against the person of another, even though only the feelings of such person are injured by the act. This means that the person who is attacked doesn't have to prove actual physical harm. They just have to show that there was an attempt and ability to cause some kind of harm. So it seems like Emiru has a pretty strong case against her attacker under California's assault law, which carries a maximum penalty of 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. That's a misdemeanor and highly likely not to result in any jail time or minimal jail time. But she also may be able to claim battery. Under California Penal Code Section 242, a battery is any willful and unlawful use of force or violence upon the person of another. This one seems pretty clear cut. Emiru's attacker forcibly grabbed her body. She may not have been actually physically injured, but the law doesn't require that, just an unlawful use of force. Under California law, battery carries a maximum penalty of 6 months in jail and a $2,000 fine. So not much different than the penalty for assault. Now, before you go on thinking that California doesn't take assault and battery seriously, these statutes are not that different from most jurisdictions, and they simply represent a base level of criminal liability. In any assault or battery case, the factual circumstances can, and often do, enhance the severity of the punishment. A prosecutor likely has a case here, and Emiru has said that she is pressing criminal charges against her attacker.
I am pressing charges against the guy with the police.
So to get a criminal conviction, the prosecutor will have to show that the attacker is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, which doesn't seem super difficult here since there were dozens of witnesses and the video that you just saw. But Emiru may also be able to pursue a civil lawsuit against her attacker, which would be even easier to win because there's a lower burden of proof. She only needs to show that he's guilty by preponderance of the evidence that is more likely than not. If Emiru does decide to file a civil suit against her attacker, she can claim actual monetary costs she incurred, like therapy, increased security expenses, legal expenses, disruption of her normal day-to-day activities, etc. But she can also claim punitive damages in a civil suit. That is a certain amount of money she feels entitled to because her attacker did a crime against society itself and ought to be punished for it. And she can also potentially make a claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress, expenses, legal expenses, disruption of her normal day-to-day activities, etc. But she can also claim punitive damages in a civil suit. That is a certain amount of money she feels entitled to because her attacker did a crime against society itself and ought
I don't know what the norm is on this, but I don't think you're allowed to generally, I think it's usually looked down upon to ask for punitive damages in a complaint. You can be awarded to them if the behavior of the person is particularly egregious. I don't think you'd normally sue for punitive damages. I could be wrong on this. Somebody tell me.
be punished for it. And she can also potentially make a claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress. To do that, she has to show that her attacker intentionally and recklessly did something that caused her to suffer emotional distress. Generally, the person's actions have to be outrageous to meet this threshold, but grabbing and forcibly kissing a stranger sure seems to be outrageous. And Emiru wouldn't be the first female celebrity to file a civil suit against a convention attendee who broke.
Wait.
She had to show that her attacker intentionally and recklessly did something that caused her to suffer emotional distress. Generally, the person's actions have to be outrageous to meet this threshold, but grabbing and forcibly kissing a stranger sure seems to be outrageous.
Is outrageous a legal term here? I don't know if I like that. They have to act purposely or recklessly, causing the victim emotional distress so severe that it could be expected to adversely affect mental health. Oh, the defendant's conduct is outrageous. Okay. I wonder if outrageous is something you wouldn't ordinarily like expect somebody to do. Like if somebody walks up and asks you for your order at a restaurant, that's not outrageous conduct. But I think when it comes to intentional infliction of emotional distress, like it has to be a thing where it's like you're very obviously and foreseeably going to cause, like it can't just be like you walk up to somebody and you say like, oh hey, I'm gonna fuck your mom, and the guy's mom like just died yesterday, and or something like that. It's like, oh, you had no idea. But like if you walk walk up to somebody and I don't know, how could you intentional infliction of emotional? If you're doing things, it's like you're either intentionally doing it or you're not just negligent, but you're so reckless in your behavior, and then it could rise to that. But it can't just be negligence, and it can't be with you having a different purpose. Yeah.
To suffer emotional distress. Generally, the person's actions have to be outrageous to meet this threshold, but grabbing and forcibly kissing a stranger sure seems to be outrageous. And Emiru wouldn't be the first female celebrity to file a civil suit against a convention attendee who broke the rules. During a 2013 meet and greet, DJ David Mueller broke Taylor.
Like grabbing somebody and kissing them against their will, I feel like that would rise to the level of recklessness or purposeful. If you know that a person doesn't want to be kissed for you by you, and you walk when you grab them and kiss them, that's not just negligence. I feel like that would personally, I feel like that would easily rise to the level of recklessness. Like you're acting incredibly reckless by grabbing a person and kissing them, a stranger and everything. I feel like it would easily meet all the elements of this.
During a 2013 meet and greet, DJ David Mueller broke Taylor Swift's backside. When Taylor complained and he was fired from his job, he sued her for defamation. She countersued him for assault and won a jury trial, which proved that unwanted touching is indeed assault. So if you're the creepy Twitch guy and you're watching this, you need to lawyer up ASAP, because you're likely to face 2 separate cases, one criminal, one civil. And frankly, the lawyers on the other side are better than you can afford. Some cash when she brings her dinner down to the basement. Now, many of Emiru's fans have also urged her to sue Twitch for failing to protect her, and Emiru herself had some pretty scathing allegations against the company. But how much is Twitch actually liable for failing to protect her? Well, it depends. As Emiru's manager noted, Twitch was pretty negligent.
She's like, okay, I've been talking to Twitch people, and I'm really upset because I noticed a lot of negligence around the event, and I'm not happy with the way that they're handling it now.
Commenters on Reddit and Emiru.
Purposeful means that they weren't basically having a seizure when doing the action. Wait, is that true? One thing that I don't know, I just don't know the answer. I don't do criminal stuff. Although I don't know why I said that, because it applies to civil stuff too. There's a difference between something called it's specific versus general intent. When it says the defendant acts purposefully or purposely, is that the general intent of just kissing somebody, or is that the specific intent of kissing somebody to cause them emotional harm? This matters sometimes, because for some crimes you have to prove like a specific intent, meaning you knew the outcome of like that particular action. But in other crimes, you just have to prove the general intent, like you intended to do the action. But I don't know when this comes up or not. I don't know if this is called out in statutes or if it's a common law thing. I don't know the answer to that.
It's 2 separate cases, one criminal, one civil. And frankly, the lawyers on the other side are better than you can afford. But maybe you can ask your mom for some cash when she brings her dinner down to the basement. Now, many of Emiru's fans have also urged her to sue Twitch for failing to protect her, and Emiru herself had some pretty scathing allegations against the company. But how much is Twitch actually liable for failing to protect her? Well, it depends. As Emiru's manager noted, Twitch was pretty negligent.
She's like, okay, I've been talking to Twitch people, and I'm really upset because I noticed a lot of negligence around the event, and I'm not happy with the way that they're handling it now.
Commenters on Reddit and Emiru's channel.
The sentence implies general intent, or it would say purposefully in order to cause harm. Okay.
Agree. If I were Twitch CEO Dan Clancy, I would lawyer up now and prepare for a lawsuit, because it looks like Emiru has a pretty good case. Let's pull the video back and talk about why. So this is our first problem. This guy just walked right past the line and no one stopped him. And here's the next problem. No one from event security intervenes once he's grabbed her. And the final problem, even after he grabs her, event security apparently just lets him walk away. Civil liability in this context centers around the question of whether the defendant had a duty to the plaintiff. Generally, people aren't legally required to protect others from harm caused by third parties, but there are exceptions.
Generally.
One is the special relationship rule. If a special relationship exists, a person or business might have a duty to protect someone from others' conduct. Courts often find this in situations like a shopping center, restaurant, or bar, and its customers or tenants. Because of this, business owners must take reasonable steps.
Why do they spell restaurant wrong? Restaurant. What? What's going on down here?
Restaurant or bar, and its customers or tenants. Because of this, business owners must take reasonable steps to keep common areas safe from likely criminal acts. One of the most important parts of this is foreseeability. If a criminal act is foreseeable, then the business has more responsibility to try and prevent it. And as many people online have pointed out, Twitch had plenty of reasons to believe that Emiru might need some extra security. At a prior TwitchCon, she'd been followed around by a fan who stalked her around the venue. And that's why her main security guard was banned, because he'd intervened on her behalf and muscled the little simp into the arms of the police.
2 years ago, where there was a guy following me around TwitchCon, and he asked him to stop the whole time. My guard asked him, the guy wouldn't stop, so he grabbed the guy, but he didn't hurt him. He was just holding the guy until the con security came.
Also, kind of crazy that Twitch banned that guard forever, while, at least according to Emiru, they only banned her attacker for 30 days. Also consider the fact that in March of this year, a stalker followed Emiru around and made death threats to Emiru and fellow streamers Valkyrae and Senna on camera during a live streamed event. Because of this, several prominent streamers like Valkyrae, Pokimane, and QT Cinderella have said they weren't sure they wanted to attend TwitchCon because they weren't.
There's generally 4 levels of mens rea: purposeful, knowingly, recklessly, and negligently. Okay.
Sure they would be safe there. If a business knows about prior criminal activity, courts have said that the business needs to provide heightened security. So legally, Twitch ought to have known that she needed extra security and should have provided that. But courts generally weigh this foreseeability against the burden created by additional security measures. And hiring security guards is considered really burdensome because it's very expensive. So California courts don't usually require ordinary businesses to do that. At a large event like a convention, though, the crowd size and fame of the featured creators tips the balance in favor of requiring the event host to hire security. And as a lot of commenters noted, the parasocial relationships created by Twitch heightens the threat even more. Twitch's best defense is that it did hire security guards and screen the people in its meet and greet line. But as Emiru pointed out, the event security guards did nothing when she was attacked, and screening meant little when each meet and greet attendee was allowed to bring an unscreened +1. So even those measures were pretty lax. Twitch's guards let this guy just walk right up past the line of registered attendees. Then they did nothing when he grabbed her in front of a room full of people. The only person who acted was Emiru's own bodyguard, shoving the guy away from her. So I bet some of you might be wondering whether he could be liable for manhandling the goofy goose.
She's never suing Twitch, brah. I mean, I feel like you could get a lawyer on contingency to just send him a letter, no? Wouldn't Twitch want to settle something like this pretty easily? Maybe? I don't know.
The honest answer is, it depends. To review, for assault, there has to be an attempt to commit violent injury on a person with the ability to follow through. And for battery, there must be a willful or unlawful use of force against a person. For Emiru, she has a strong case that she was the victim of both assault and battery. But what about the other guy? Let's watch that clip again. That looks like a pretty serious shove, but it also looks pretty justified. Remember, though, that Twitch banned Emiru's other bodyguard for forcibly restraining a rabid fan at a prior con. So maybe Twitch thinks this is the assault it needs to punish. This was definitely a use of force under California's battery statute. But under California law, like most jurisdictions, there are some scenarios where assault or battery is allowed, such as self-defense or defense of others. California's jury instructions for assault specifically state that if someone acts in self-defense or to defend a third party, that's not assault. The jury instructions for battery are similar, with one additional caveat. If someone uses force to defend themselves or another person, they can only use force that is reasonably necessary to defend against the danger. So Emiru's bodyguard couldn't say, pull out a gun and permaban the dude from this mortal coil. But shoving him away seems pretty reasonable under the circumstances. It was necessary to get the man to let go of her and back off, and it didn't cause any injury. Some might credibly argue that more force would have been warranted. On the other hand, if he hadn't acted, could Emiru's bodyguard, like Twitch, be liable for failing to protect her? An ordinary bystander wouldn't typically be liable for failing to intervene in the situation, but a bodyguard might, because bodyguards have a higher duty of care than the average person does. They've been specifically hired to protect that person. So if they fail to do that, then they're not just bad at their job, they're also potentially civilly liable. This generally means that security guards have to use reasonable care and attention to protect people and property, act responsibly, and help keep the environment safe. From the video, it's pretty clear that Emiru was being attacked. As Emiru noted in her public statement, she screamed loudly. Any reasonable bodyguard should have interpreted this as a situation where they needed to intervene, just like her bodyguard did. It was his job to protect her, especially against such an obvious threat. If he hadn't acted, especially since he was standing so close, he also could have been liable. So Emiru's bodyguard is probably in the clear. He did his job. But still, probably a good idea for him to lawyer up, just in case. Lawyers need work in this economy. Twitch, if you believe them, are also taking the situation seriously and have promised to do a full investigation and review their security standards and practices accordingly. And Emiru's got a long road ahead to fully resolve the TwitchCon situation, but it wouldn't surprise me if she decides to bring suit against Twitch. This was, after all, her last TwitchCon ever, as she proclaimed during the fallout.
Regardless, like I said, I'm done with going to TwitchCon. Probably done entirely with convention streams. I feel like it's just time, you know. And I think that's probably true for a lot of streamers. The climate has, really changed.
And who knows, maybe we'll all be treated to the surreal sight of Iron Mouse taking the witness stand. But there's just one more thing to address, because in all the fallout of this, something else came out. In her October 25th video, Emiru talked more about the TwitchCon attack, but she also made some other quite serious accusations against her ex-boyfriend, fellow streamer, and OTK owner, Mizkiff.
Today, I'm finally going to be opening up about the psychological domestic abuse, stalking and harassment, sexual assault, and threats of blackmail that Mizkiff has done towards me, and some of these issues which are still ongoing.
Fans have long speculated that these two dated each other, and it turns out that they did, and it was a total mess. In her video statement, Emiru claimed that she had already talked to a lawyer. Good for you, Emiru. This is one of the most important steps for anyone in an awful situation like this. She accused Mizkiff of engaging in a bunch of scary behaviors, including sexually assaulting her one night on a couch when she was crying and he put her hands down her pants. Let's pause on that incident for a second. This took place in Texas, so the law is a little different from California. In Texas, the relevant statutes are Texas Penal Code sections 22.011 and 22.012. Section 22.011, sexual assault, requires penetration, but section 22.012, indecent assault, can just be a touch to an intimate part without someone's consent. It's gross that we even have to talk about this, but unfortunately this is the world we live in. Like California, Texas specifies what is considered an intimate body part. Putting a hand down someone's pants would definitely qualify as indecent assault under section 22.012. And Texas's 10-year statute of limitations for indecent assault shouldn't be a problem. So if she wants to make a police report, she can. And she could also follow up with a civil suit, which again requires a lower standard of proof. Emiru also made a variety of other accusations that he manipulated her, screamed at her, threatened her staff, and threatened to engage in some kind of weird...
Okay.